So I've given the hull a scrape this morning with a scraper, and I did get a lot of stuff off, but I've decided scraping alone wasn't going to do the job. Sorry, there's fly plaguing me this morning. And indeed it's not. It needs scraping, but it also needs pressure washing. Now, I've only done a couple of minutes of this before I put the camera on, and already it's pretty mesmerising. I have no idea why. Any amateur psychologists out there? Now, where you can see bits of paint flaking off, that's called anti-foul, and that's a special paint called a biocide that discourages little sea animals from living on the hull of your boat. And there's a lot of coats on this, so when you see the paint flaking off, it's not a major problem. It just means the paint was loose, and it's just as well I'm taking it off. But it's going to get another 2 coats of this on top once it's all clean and dried out. So this is how my morning started. I bought the pressure washer, 50 quid from somewhere. I've been to that many shops I can't remember. I bought an extension lead, 20 quid I think. I bought a hose pipe, 30 quid. It's non-stop money. It's non-stop money. But not only will this stop my hull rotting and keep little bogies from making their home on my boat, it will also give me just a little bit of extra speed because the hull isn't dragging through the water carrying a zillion creatures and the little homes on it. So yeah, that's what my morning's looking like. So this side has been scraped, the other side hasn't, and this little part at the front has been pressure washed. So I'll show you once it's finished what it looks like. Oogly doogly. Just to illustrate the point about things living on your boat, this is what I'm talking about. You see that? That's something there. I don't actually know what it is. I was going to say that's, and then I don't know what it is, to be honest. But pressure washer gets some of it. I think I'll give it a wash and then oh, that's what it is. Look here, I've got it. That's what was living on my keel. I suspect it was killed by the anti-foul, which is what the anti-foul does, but it did have the option to let go and swim away, but it didn't. Decide to stay and died, so that death is not on me. Okay, anti-foul working great. So I've done half. You can see this half of the boat, that's where the sling was. Rubbed some of the stuff off. See how dirty that is. And it's still got whatever that is, like growth there. But oh, isn't she pretty this side? Who's a pretty girl? Yes'm. And she's like that all the way along. I even managed to get that cleaned up. I was quite surprised, because that was absolutely minging. The propeller was pretty bad. I think I'm going to actually scrape the propeller down, and I've got a completely separate anti-foul for this. It's not the same as what's on at the moment. That's not designed for propellers really. This is all nice and clean. Look at my rudder. What a clean rudder. So this has still got to be gouged out. You see all this old sealant. That's actually what seals the keel to to the hull. And you can see what's happening to it. So that's all got to be gouged out and completely resealed, because I think there's water actually getting in to the keel boards. So it's a long job, but it's not a major one. It's just time consuming, raking all the stuff out and putting the new sealant in. But that's for when I've finished washing both sides. So I'm going to crack on with the other side now. I won't show you all of it because it's incredibly boring, but that's what I'm going to do. I bought this yesterday. It was only a few pounds, so 6 I think. And instead of just a normal wallpaper scraper, which I was using, this thing has just got mental coverage. Look at that. Look at that. That's death and destruction to anything that's living on my boat. That's just annihilation. That's a killer. That's an assassin. That's a sea life assassin, that is. For about £6. So I'll scrape on. Well, I'm very surprised. That's come up really well with just a scrape. This side, for some obscure reason, isn't anywhere near as bad as the other side. That keel is wonderful. So, right, I'm going to pressure wash it anyway. But yeah, chuffed to bits. That was a really easy job. So, I bought a new halyard for the main sheet, and I was looking at ways to attach it to the head of the sail, and on YouTube one of the things I found was a locking knot, which apparently could withstand all of the stresses of lifting a sail on the halyard. So I thought, I shall try that knot. And the first thing that came to my hand was a pair of scissors. And I duly present a pair of scissors. So I thought, well, they've got a loop on the handle, so I'll use these. I'll tie the knot on, and I'll pull the rope, and I'll see what happens, and I'll see how tight it gets. I'll wiggle it, and I'll shimmy it, and I'll play with it, and I'll see if I can make it come loose. Except within seconds, this happened. I actually, my favourite scissors, which I've had for years, and I think I got them in B&M. Sorry about the focus there, the camera's got it now. I got them in B&M for like $1.99 or something, 150 years ago, and I absolutely love them. And there they are, broke. That's what a locking halyard knot does to a pair of scissors. It's a killer. It's a killer knot. So I think the biggest problem with this bit is all of this black caulking needs to come out because it's rotten, and it's sealing. It's not sealing very well, yet at the same time it's very well established and doesn't want to come out. And I've been trying a variety of methods to get it budged. The latest one being a standing knife. But as you can see, oh, there we go. So it's coming off in little bits like that. That's excellent. That's a good bit to come off. But it's right the way along the keel, inside and out on both of them. So the hull's sanded. This is what I'm doing now, because that keel needs to be re-caulked, so all this needs to come out and this cleaned up so that I can re-caulk it. So that's what I'm doing at the moment. Wish me luck. Well, I do believe it's ready. This was one of the problems. There's a joint in there and it was caked full of black sealant stuff, of which some you can still see. I'm talking about this gap here. I mean, that sealant isn't ever going to come out now, but I've had to chop away as much as I can on the front. And also, this red is anti-foul paint, old anti-foul paint. The white's primer. This black stuff, I've absolutely no idea what it is, but the whole keel is covered in it, both of them are. And that's not going to come off without shot blasting, or weeks of work, one of the two. So I've smoothed it down. You can see where it's so patchy. I've bared the places where it's rusty, so that I can bare them and clean them up a bit. And this is all back to the steel now, because I've got to put new sealant in there, in that gap. And the sealant will come right out in a kind of a bulge. And if we go underneath the boat, I hope you can see in the dark. Oh, there's a rough bit. This was another place where all the sealant was, you see. And I'll take you over this end. This keel also has had to be rubbed all the way down. You can see all the pitting and where all the rust's come through, and it's not a major problem. It just actually, it does need shot blasting at some point. But this was a killer. You can see where the sealant went down to and how thick it is, and that was a right job cutting all that out. So I finally got all that out, thank goodness. It just needs a good clean up. Pressure washer. You can see how thick it is there. If I put the camera like that, you can see how thick the anti-foul is. That's yeah. Well, it's not just anti-foul, to be fair. See the thickness there? That's anti-foul. And here, see there? And primer. And whatever the heck it was that he put on the keel. Probably some kind of sealant to prevent it rusting, but it's not actually protected it. So it's just all had to come off. Or most of it anyway at the top. The other keel, of course, pretty much the same. Although to be fair, that keel wasn't that bad. It wasn't bad at all to do, and it wasn't bad at all to get the sealant out. This one though is the one that in the survey, the surveyor said one of the keel bolts did have a bit of rust on, which isn't the end of the world. But you can see this is some of the sealant that I peeled off that joint, and you see the rust on it. So he sealed rust in, so that's obviously part of the problem. So I've got a rust inhibitor which I'm going to paint on before I seal it, and then before I see this one compared to the other one is far cleaner, isn't it? It's much cleaner all the way along. So once I seal these gaps on both sides of each keel, I might not have enough. I've only got 2 tubes, so I might have to go and get another couple of tubes. But once I've sealed those gaps, I can then put the anti-rust on the rest of the keel, and then I can give it another clean, and then I can put the anti-foul, and the anti-foul is basically just another coat of this red stuff straight over the top. And anti-foul lasts about a year normally, potentially 2. It depends where you're going. If you just stick to rivers, it can last 5 years. If you're in the sea constantly, it might last a year. But once it's anti-fouled, I think next year or the year after, I'll take it out and I shall shot blast the entire hull from the blue line all the way down to the bottom of the keel. Well, saying shot blast, it's like absolutely minute, tiny, minuscule little nylon type beads so as not to damage the boat, but it strips all of this stuff off. Then put a coat of primer on the whole hull and anti-foul, and then she'll be nice and smooth through the water. Might even gain a little bit of speed, who knows. So this is what I've been working on. I'm absolutely knackered. My arms are ready to drop off. Now, my main 2 tools, after I realised, well, obviously a standing knife to cut a lot of that sealant away, but when I realised that a power tool, not even an orbital sander, was going to really touch this, I was going to go through one sheet for about that amount of space, and there's this amount of space to do and the other side. So I was going to go through hundreds of sheets of paper, sandpaper. So my 2 main tools were this one, a B&Q Dial brand scraper, which you might use for a whole variety of tasks. That was absolutely invaluable. It's so sharp, and that was brilliant for getting into this keel like that, scraping away. And this curvy edge there, that was brilliant for putting up here and pulling along. And it's still sharp now, it was pulling stuff off. So that, I think, was like £3 or something. It won't focus on it. So about £3 or something it was from B&Q. That absolutely reliable tool, fantastic. The other one was this Harris tool, and it's a scraper, and that apparently is a tungsten carbide blade in there. You can see the edge of it. It's double-edged, so I've turned it around when the first one blunted. But let me tell you, that took a massive amount of blunting. It's done the entire hull, and basically what this was used for was, instead of the power tool scraping over here and on here, just scraping like this to try and take the top off, which it really did. And I think, see there, let's go close up, see there's another rust pit there. Digs them straight out. This scraper is immense. It's absolutely amazing. £6. It's very, very, very stiff, this handle, so it doesn't bend or flex when you're working. Easily cleaned. Easily take that one screw out and you can flip the blade round. Doesn't feel sharp to the finger, but as a scraper, that would, I don't know, that would scrape the stupid smile off Jimmy Carr, and that's saying something. So there you go, they've been my major tools to do this so far. So now I'm going to get the pressure washer out and give it another blast down on the whole hull, and then it's ready for sealing tomorrow. Woohoo! So my latest purchase is this sexy beast. Oh yes, oh yes, baby, that's what I bought. This is a random orbital sander, and this replaces this big beast of a sealie, which to be fair is a buffer. It's designed to be a buffer. It takes the pads obviously, but this huge thing is simply an orbital buffer, and it was an absolute nightmare doing this job. Now you should be able to see the swirl marks. That's what an orbital sander does. See all those swirl marks? And believe me, it's very, very difficult to actually hold on to that big heavy beast. It weighs about, what does it weigh? It must weigh £1.5 kilos. But when you're holding that and you're manoeuvring it for a couple of hours on end, that's a big, big heavy beast. Look at all these swirl marks. Which doesn't really matter because the anti-foul is so deep. It's about 4 coats, 5 coats deep. So it doesn't really matter. All I'm doing is roughing the surface. But I want the whole of the surface rough, not just swirly marks where little bits get rough. And it wasn't really working. So I decided to splash out under bomb, under Erbauer. And it's even got a little dust bucket, look. It collects its own dust, how cool is that? And one of the things I like, it claims to have, and it does, it has a locking handle. Now the sealie, the trigger's down the back there and it doesn't lock. You have to press that little button in before the trigger will work, a safety feature. But once it works you can't lock it on. So you've got to grasp it constantly throughout the whole time you're using it, which again is very tiring. So yeah, this is a sexy piece of kit. So I shall magically stick a little disc onto that, and you see we're up and ready to go. And we've got this handle at the front which can be adjusted, so that'll make life a lot easier. I'm going to guess about 5 is going to do for this, and that is my new tool for the day, because this side is done, although I've still got the keel to finish on this side, because I don't know if the camera will pick it up. All that gunk in there is the awful black, all the black stuff is the awful gunk that somebody's put in before, and it's coming loose but it's not coming out, so I'm going to have to dig that out with something very sharp and very robust. And then I've got all of that keel to rough down as well, and I've got all of this to rough down underneath. So really I haven't actually done that much. I've done perhaps a quarter, because I've done the whole of the outside of this part rubbing down. So all this has to be done. It doesn't actually take that long. A couple of hours would probably see the majority of the hull done. Underneath here is a difficulty because it's hard to get under. I'm bent down now to get underneath here, and that keel has to be raked out as well. I finally got my spinnaker pole, thank you. I'm going to try and polish that later. And the drips there, I use the acid to try and deal with any rust, because I knew it was going to sit for a little while. So that's all good and fine there. So that's the order of the day. I'll be sanding, 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 sanding. And there's my anchor chain at Wynn Road. Now I'm going to, I think I'll need the other anchor. This one's actually not heavy enough for my boat, but each line is about 2 meters long or just over, and I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16 lines of chain. or 17 lines of chain at roughly 2 meters. So that's 34. So taking the slack, I've got about 36 meters of chain. I think people say you should have a meter for each length of your boat, and the boat's 33, so I've actually got more than people say. But then there's the rod as well, the rope which attaches to it, but there's not much of that. There's maybe 10 meters or something, so I might have to look at having more chain. And I've got a kedge anchor, so I need chain for that as well. But that's in the future. Let's concentrate on the boat right now. Get the hull done. I've got gloves. I've got my mask there. And I do remember when I bought this, I actually thought it had glasses inside, and it doesn't. So I'm going to have to go up top and find a pair of safety specs, and then I can start. See you later. This is definitely better. Definitely, without a shadow of a doubt. This random orbital sander is way better than the one I had. Well, the other one's really a polisher, not a sander. So this is how it's looking. As you can see, it's all the old nasty anti-foul, and this right down a nice tasty gel coat. Might have a bit of fairing to do, but that's okay. Bit of a mess as well, like, as you can see, but what the heck, it needs doing. It's got to be done. It's going to be much easier to sort out later. So I'm glad to see they're going on well. Well, it's just after 4 o'clock and they've been at it since 8 AM and they're packed in for the day because they can't finish it today. That's pure fiberglass. The gel coat's gone completely there. The keel is absolutely amazing. I'm chuffed to bits. I mean, you can see it's been quite pitted, so I'm pleased that's done, and we'll get that keel epoxied up and primed and what have you. It looks there, that's resin, but it's on a level with the gel coat, so I wonder if that's been some kind of repair in the past or something. Maybe osmosis, I'm not sure, but there's quite a lot of areas where they've gone through the gel coat down to the fiberglass. So, and they've done underneath, well, on one side they've done underneath, they've done a propeller. I'm not sure that was a great idea because they've blasted the grease holes, so I don't know how sensible that was. And of course, in that bearing in there, I'm sure there'll have been some sand got in, so I'm not entirely certain if that was a great idea. And on the anode, I mean, it's brutal. Look at that. That blue is a little kind of a matte gasket that sits under the anode, and it's just torn it off. But all under there is done. It looks like he's done this side of the keel as well, but not this side. So it's Thursday today. He's coming back on Tuesday apparently to finish it all off. That's looking like probably most of another day as well. So right, okay, well, I can't do what I wanted to do tonight, but there we go. to bring you up to speed for those who don't know, what happened was I hired somebody to sandblast my hull, and we agreed on a price, and he did a job. Now, as you can see, as I mentioned before, the gel coat's coming through, but anyway, I'm going to fix all that. So he did half the hull, and then he stopped and he ran out of time because he said it was much more difficult than he thought, which I found surprising because he'd already done a test on the keel and the hull. That was his test on the keel, and that was his test on the hull, and he said 1 day will do it, I'll be able to do your entire boat. So I was like, okay. So anyway, couldn't fit it in, so he rang me back and said, right, I can't come back tomorrow anyway, I need to come back in I don't know, a couple of days or something it was. So I said, okay then. So then he rang me back a couple of days later and said it'll be a few more days. I said, okay then. And all the while I'm sitting with me lovely shiny new stripped keels going rusty, which is not the end of the world. I'll just strip that off again, but it's not the point. So what happened then was he texted me and said, I'm afraid I can't do it. I need another full day at your boat to finish it off. All this side needs doing, obviously, as you can see. All this, there's anti-foul. I think I've showed you all this before, but anyway, just in case. Come on, camera, what's going on with that camera? There. Yeah. There's anti-foul, and then underneath the anti-foul is VC tar, and that's the killer. And underneath the tar is some more anti-foul, and then there's gel coat. Anyway, so he said, I'll come and do it, but I need another £300. And I said, no, wait a minute, we agreed on a price, $450 for the job finished. Now you're saying you want an extra $300 to finish the job. You just can't do that. So he said, well, that's all I can do. I'm not going to finish the job like for no extra money. And I said, well, in that case, you've only done half a job, which he has, half the hull. So I said, I'll give you half the price, which is, but I said, it's a tiny bit more than half. So I said, I'll give you $250. So he agreed to that. Now where that's left me with is this side of the hull still needs doing. So if I stand back, that's the bit I did have to work today with a grinder, and I'm trying out a nice ferrite, a ferra rather, flap disc from Lidl or Aldi, one of the two. They were cheap anyway, so I'm trying one of them, and it's really aggressive, but that's kind of good. So I'm just using the tip to kind of get, I mean, that looks black, but actually there's hardly any black VC tar left on that, and that's what I'm using it for. I'm getting the top coat of anti-foul off, and then the VC tar underneath, and that's all I'm doing. And then what I want to do is come back with a higher grit, like 180 or something, on my sander, and fare that in nicely before I gel coat the whole lot again. It's going to be gel coated about 3 times and primed and all the rest of it. So anyway, well, it's that long that the light runs out. So that's how much I've got to do. I finished work and I did this bit. It took me about an hour to do that. You have to be really careful because I don't want to grind straight through the gel coat. So it took me about an hour. So if you see it, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17 hours plus the keel, 18, 19, so it's about 20 hours of work. So 20 hours, what's that? 8 hours a day for 2.5 days. That's not bad, really, if I can keep it up. That's actually not bad. it took him, it would have taken him 2 days to do it with a sandblasting machine. So if it takes me double that time, just using a grinder and a sander, then you know, that's not bad really. So that's where we're at. But I have got some tikka chicken waiting for me, and I'm going to make some stuff to go with it. So good night.